No. Sorry, it does not look cool when you do it. Damn it does.
What's up, lore masters? When you start to analyze the Lower Decks episode, Moist Vessel, you begin to see clearly what the problem is with the show overall. That is to say, the problem's Mariner. However, it's not what you think. My problem with the ensign is the unreasonable focus on her. You see, Beckett is a great character overall. She's well thought out with drive and aspiration. She has a moral code, and most importantly, she's flawed. These issues can be seen, and they do cause her to struggle most of the time. Ironically, sometimes they do allow her to flourish, but more than not, she pays the price for having them. She has baggage while being competent. She's honestly a good aspect to the show, and that's not even a bad story arc. However, the problem is the writers have become hyper-focused on her story. This is a problem because we overexplore her issues with no resolution for an unreasonable amount of time. It's not the character, it's not even the arc that she's going through. It's just that it takes too long. To put it succinctly, Mariner's story arc is the motion picture of disco-era Trek. It is a decent story, it has great parts, they just take so fracking much time explaining it, and then re-explain it. And the horrific thing is, this is going to go on until episode 9. The creators might try to argue that this was done on purpose, that it's a build-up to the story with the payoff being episode 9. But I'd have to disagree with them. I think they overshot it. I want to be clear though, it's not that I don't like the arc. It is good. I just think we could have spent more time on other characters. Let's just get into it.
And it is a true delight to be able to work with him again.
Looking at this episode specifically, it starts off pretty poorly. Mariner, as an ensign, is assisting the senior staff and yawning while a visiting commanding officer is giving their presentation. We know that ultimately she can do this because she won't be booted off the ship, largely due to nepotism. However, I think there was a failure to really dig into her malfeasance. They keep it surface level, which is, I guess, understandable since we have an adult cartoon, but they had the opportunity to really emphasize how wrong all of this is. Ultimately, the yawning is treated as insubordination when it should be something much, much deeper. They treat it as if she had snapped accidentally with a commanding officer when this is a consistent habit of hers. I honestly hate that it wasn't more than what they made it. However, regardless of how it was treated, the yawning does embarrass the captain, who then has a one-on-one with Mariner. And we have the standard daughter-mother hatred trope, and then she leaves.
Live long and prosper.
Don't you give me that sarcastic Vulcan salute, Beckett!
In a pretty comedic way. The executive officer comes in and suggests that Mariner be given all of the worst jobs at once, which then we have a pretty cringe joke, and we're off to the races.
Ooh, those are the worst jobs on the ship. Scraping carbon off of slightly harder carbon. That's Klingon prison stuff.
However, the ensign of color turns it around on them as she finds ways of making all of it fun, even the unmentionable jobs. This, of course, outrages the captain, who does the worst thing that she could do. She promotes Mariner, who absolutely hates it.
Oh, no.
I will say this, though. Mariner is juxtaposed against Boimler pretty well here. She has no interest in command and yet gets it when she breaks the rules. Boimler does can to be the best of the best and still doesn't get there. I'd say there's probably a joke about how the military operates when it comes to promotions, but I couldn't be sure. Anyway, this ultimately all comes to a head as Beckett calls out the captain. The confrontation occurring in the captain's ready room. Now, for those watching who have seen the episode, you'll probably note that I haven't talked about the alien ship. The reason for this is because, well, it's at best a C-plot. It's just a method that will get them from point A to point B. While very interesting, there isn't a lot to invest in it. Another vessel has discovered a generational ship that wandered off course. This alien race is in cryosleep, and they have some type of miracle liquid that can turn non-biological objects into biological ones. Basically, they can drop this stuff on a dead planet and turn it into a thriving ecosystem. As stated, the generation ship wandered off course and so now must be saved by the Federation. Alright, groovy. Given the find, this will give a lot of accolades to whichever captain saves this alien species. Interestingly, whether they meant to intentionally do this or not, it does lead into a theory that has long been talked about. We know that by this time, currency as we have it in the 21st century is not something Starfleet widely engages in, at least as of the upload of this video. That would mean that the major commodity would be prestige. And this kind of find, saving an entire alien race, would have a lot of prestige. We even see this as a point of contention between the captains.
Starfleet Command ought to just start engraving my name on a plaque right now. Oh, and yours too, Durango, of course.
In the end, the captain of the other vessel would be so egotistical and such a glory hog that he would put the mission in danger. And, surprise, surprise, that does lead to a large catastrophe. By moving out of position as the captain does, plating from the alien vessel is torn off and the MacGuffin juice slams into both Starfleet vessels, crippling them. Lo and behold, we do see Mariner as she truly is, mask off as it were. She can tell that there is a change in the atmosphere and moves to save her mom. Ultimately, she and the captain both work together, figure out what's going on, and stop the terraforming action on the ship. I would question why Rutherford or the XO don't know what's going on and work to resolve it, but I think we could come up with some excuses, perhaps busy with the terraforming happening where they are. To the credit of the show, I do think it shows in future episodes that all of the officers, or at least most of them, would be able to resolve this issue given enough time. But as stated, Mariner would save the day. The captain, unfortunately, would push too hard, and Beckett ultimately ends up insulting an admiral just so she can be demoted.
Whoa, 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 whoa. I am sorry. Are you trying to say the word censors? Because to me, you're saying censors.
Again, the fact she isn't thrown out of Starfleet is probably all the captain's doing, and something that we'll definitely dig into and explore in episode 9. Anyway, Mariner insults the admiral and is back on lower decks. Let's rewind and take a look at Tendy's arc, because God forbid lower decks have plots for all of our characters. Generally, we're just going to have 2 major plots going on. Tendy's arc here is, I guess, frustrating. I know it's more meant to be played as a joke, but the fact she is so desperate to be liked is just sad. In theory, I could tie this to her being an Orion, needing to be adored and such, which is something she might not get in Starfleet a lot, especially if they found a way to ensure that her pheromones don't impact other species. Ultimately, she goes to something called an ascension. She wishes to observe it, messes it up, and makes an enemy. This drives her crazy, and she does everything she can to make him her friend. He hates her until they almost die, and she saves him. Then a funny scene happens, and we're out. I know that's pretty quick compared to Mariner, but that's literally the plot. Tendy makes someone mad. That makes Tendy sad. Tendy then makes the guy glad. Then plot end with funny point. As I've stated, it is really sad that we aren't given a ton of depth to her or Rutherford, and we really won't see that in the future. It's my sincere hope that this is resolved in Season 2. At the end of the day, the episode is fine. It shows Mariner's arc pretty well, which is played off of Boimler and what he wants, and Tendy is at least given something to do. Rutherford barely exists, and that's all I'm going to say about him. I'd say this is probably your standard episode, except instead of Tendy having an arc, give it to Boimler. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.